You're listening to the Rewrite the Rules podcast. We are your hosts. My name is Harriet.
I'm Beth.
And I'm Natalie.
If you want to work towards achieving true food and body image freedom, you are in the right place.
Rewrite the Rules podcast is your survival guide to letting go of harmful societal expectations and unlearning any unhelpful beliefs that are stopping you from having a healthy and loving relationship with food and yourself.
Our mission is to help you feel heard, understood, and empower you to step out of the box and rewrite your rules so you can live life on your terms. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello everyone.
Welcome back to another episode. Welcome back to Rewrite the Rules. We really hope you enjoyed last week's episode on fad diet. And because we have so many silly diet experiences up our sleeve, we are bringing you a part 2. So once again, thank you everyone for all the support, all the downloads, all the shares. We really, really appreciate it.
And as a disclaimer, again, we just want to mention that there is going to be talk of calories, diets, macronutrients, and, everything to do with food, and also, talk of weight loss as well. But, if it's not for you and you don't want to tune in, then we're going to have lots of other episodes, which I'm sure, you're going to feel more comfortable listening to. But also I want to say that this is also to try and help anybody that's struggling with those kind of things. So it could be really beneficial for you to listen as well, So yes, without further ado, Harriet, do you want to explain your second fad diet for us?
Yes, I do. And I also just want to say that I think it's just so ironic that we've had to make a part 2 for this topic. And when we were speaking about this topic and the cray diets that we've been on, we had to say to each other, okay guys, we need to limit it to 2 each, because we've all just been on so many. And I think that's just the irony of this, and it just says a lot. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? But without further ado, I'm not making this like a, what do you call it, a ritual, but I am gonna.
No, I think it is gonna be now. I think it is.
What's the word I'm thinking of? Not ritual, like a tradition.
Tradition. What drink have you got today, though?
So, everyone, today I have Schweppes Sparkling Lime Soda.
Oh.
Yeah. Last week I had a Coke Zero. Are you ready?
Ready.
Beautiful.
Brilliant. Beautiful.
Everyone's probably like, okay, Harry,
let's
get on with it. Okay. So my second diet, I'm honestly embarrassed to have to talk about this and to share that I did this for such a long time. And I think it's going to be really shocking. And even over reading my notes, I just can't believe I used to do this. This was in another life for me. And when I think back at my old self, I literally think this was in a past life. The diet that I went on is called the OMAD diet, and OMAD stands for 1 meal a day.
Well, I know a lot of people who did this.
Yeah.
I'm shocked because I saw that you put this down. So obviously we do have a little bit of a plan. I just thought, what's that you've written down there? Like I thought, I don't know. I was like, must be getting old because I don't know what these abbreviations mean anymore. Actually, it blows my mind that you actually did it.
Yeah. So if it's not already obvious, OMAD, 1 meal a day, literally means that you have 1 meal a day. And this was coupled with the keto diet. So for anyone who hasn't listened to the previous episode, part 1, my diet that I was talking about was the keto diet. And there was this narrative, there was talk around, if you want to do the keto diet and be super effective, it'd be even better than what the keto diet already is, then you should couple keto with fasting. And hence, again, research shows that fasting is really good for you. And of course, I didn't look at this research, but that was my justification. I was doing keto for maybe a year and a half and on and off doing 1 meal a day. And to facilitate my 1 meal a day, I had this app. There was literally a fasting app that I had that was essentially like a timer. You would start the timer when you had finished your last meal, and so that would tell you how long you fasted for, and then you would stop it once you started your next meal, which would be the next day. And for me, as you can imagine, as you're probably thinking, that meal a lot of the times was a full-blown binge. And I remember, and I wasn't binging, like my binging wasn't as bad as it was previously in my like late teens, early 20s, but I would say I was like binging maybe once a month, twice a month. But I remember I would all day be thinking about food. And I remember very often I would plan to go to McDonald's or something like that. And I would get honestly like 3 meals, like 3 main meals, like 2 apple pies. And I would plan it. I'd go there, get it, and eat it all and consume it all. And I wouldn't even be full. I would find it very easy to eat that amount. And I think maybe that's why like I didn't connect it with a binge, because I was in control. It was planned. And I also didn't feel guilty afterwards.
It's probably because you were being given permission to actually binge, and that's why you didn't feel that guilt after, because they were telling you, look, it's okay to behave in this way.
Yeah, literally. And it's interesting because in an intervention for binge eating, a tool that some people find really helpful actually is that permission to binge. But the problem with this is that I was setting myself up every day to binge. It wasn't what I was eating. That wasn't the problem. It's the fact that I wasn't eating in other parts of the day. So it wasn't even the binging that I look back now and see as the issue, which I know some people might be like, what? But I think it's good that my body had that response. And, you know, I say this to clients, like if I suspect a client isn't eating enough and they're binging, I think that's your body working properly.
Yeah, so it's alerting you that, you know, hold on a minute, there's something not quite right here. We need to eat.
We need to eat. And so the binging is not the problem. It's the restriction that's the problem. So yeah, we just spent all day thinking about food. I was waiting until that point. And normally it was, because this was, again, in my past life where I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't in this industry at all. And I remember working in an office and I would always say, okay, I'm going to eat my meal after work. So let me try and get through the day, and then I'll have my meal when I get home. So as you can imagine, all day just thinking about food. What time is it? Going on the app, looking at the timer and thinking, okay, done another hour, that's good. And obsession.com, looking at YouTube videos, researching on Reddit threads, because I needed it. I needed that support, I guess, that justification, or other people are doing it so I can do it. And yeah, and I guess because I spent so much of my life dieting and struggling with disordered eating, this, yeah, like you said, Beth, this gave me the permission to eat what I wanted. And I was getting so much praise from people. Wow, like you're so committed, you're so disciplined. I was actually thinking about discipline the other day and how it's expressed as this positive quality. But I actually think there's a very fine line between discipline and obsession. And so a quality that in its own right can be very positive and can be very healthy and helpful, it can so easily cross that boundary into obsession, which isn't a good quality and it isn't healthy and it isn't helpful. I think I was in both camps. Sometimes I would consider myself disciplined and sometimes I would consider myself more obsessed. I would say I was probably in camp obsessed for the majority of my time doing this diet. But yeah, it was just all consuming. And obviously doing what I do now and all of my training and the research I do and my experience, it almost like makes my skin curl. Is that the phrase? Makes your skin crawl.
And yeah, I think it's your toenails curl. Toenails curl, skin crawl. Honestly, there's some things I say when we're talking on this podcast and I listen back and I think, what did I say there? So if any of you listeners think that didn't sound right, it probably wasn't right, but in my head I thought it was right. So
if you know me in a personal, professional sense, you know that I'm just not good at idioms. I can't get quotes right. I can't get idioms right. I'm just useless in that department.
I think we're all in that camp. Camp.
So my skin was curling. My skin curls at my skin.
Your toes are crawling.
Yeah, my toes are crawling.
Okay.
You know, all of the above. And at the thought of the fact that I prescribed myself a plan where I could only eat 1 meal a day, and then I was proud of it, and I would tell people about it and people would cheer me on. It is the epitome of disordered eating. And if I'm being completely honest, I think it's still affected me until this day. And the whole intermittent fasting and OMAD situation really blunted my hunger. I actually started working with a dietitian a few weeks ago, and she was like, yeah, it sounds like your hunger is blunted. I still sometimes struggle to eat breakfast, and I eat breakfast every morning because it gives me energy, and I love breakfast foods, but still to this day I almost have not force myself, but I have to sit down, tell myself like, hey, this is a good thing, this is going to give you energy, and then my body is like, yeah, love it.
The fact that you've said that, Harriet, there even just gives me a bit of relief, and I'm sure like other listeners as well, because for me it's exactly the same. If anything, I really used to push the timings of eating back quite far, and I guess it still affects me to this day, even though I know I don't have that relationship with food anymore. You know, I still overeat, as I think it's completely normal to, but I didn't want to leave too much time in the evening free, because that was my thinking time to eat. So if I push my breakfast back really far, my lunch back really far, my dinner back, you know, as close to bedtime as I can, which I really have to work on. I have to work on making that time to sit down and have breakfast. And then I'm like, of course I'm hungry. Like, I'm hungry, but it blunts your hunger cues for sure when you're pushing back your food timings.
And because I'd say mentally I'm fully recovered, you know, I have no intention of not having breakfast or skipping meals, and I don't want to. Diet culture and anything to do with it actually sickens me. I think I've got that mental freedom, and my body's just still catching up. At the same time, it's like I prioritize it, and I make sure it's something that I do. And, you know, something I used to always do is have coffee for breakfast, a black coffee. Coffee is not a meal.
What I used to do is if I would slip into something, you know, I'm going to restrict, I just keep going with it, because I would deem that to be weight loss, and for me weight loss is really important. But if I catch myself doing any of those things now, I can get it there and then, and I'll be like, no, I don't do that. Like, I prioritize food. Like, even if, you know, I don't have time for lunch, I will still eat at whatever time of the day to make up for that meal, because I'm like, I am not eating. And that's the difference, you know. It just sometimes takes your mind is there, but your body is like, just hold on a minute, I just still need to, you know, take it slow and catch up.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I can definitely relate in terms of like your hunger signals being blunted, and I would sort of experience fatigue and maybe a bit of dizziness, and like acknowledge that first before I would acknowledge my hunger. So I'd get up, feel a bit dizzy, and think, oh, actually I think I need to eat some food, but I wouldn't feel any hunger. So I can completely relate on that one.
Yeah, but
also like meal timings as well. I have had this conversation with a client before. She was like, I'm really hungry, but I don't want to eat my lunch before 12 o'clock. And I was like, if you're hungry at 11:30, what is stopping you having your lunch then? And she was like, well, because it's before 12 o'clock. Also, things like meal timings, when you're supposed to eat breakfast, when you're supposed to eat lunch, when you're supposed to eat tea, are implemented, and people are ignoring their hunger cues because they're like, oh, I can't eat breakfast till X time. I can't eat dinner until this time as well.
I guess the final thing I'd say on the OMAD diet is, obviously I didn't stick to it every day. And there were just times where I just abandoned like the app, and then I would look at it one day and it'd be like, you haven't eaten in 7 days. But obviously I had. But it's kind of like how my relationship with like MyFitnessPal, like I would spend days and days tracking, and then suddenly I would like, won't do it anymore. And it's like, yeah, it's like wasted energy. And or I would spend like the whole day tracking and then just not track the evening meal because it wasn't quote unquote healthy. So I say there was a lot of shame attached to it, like, oh, I failed, I'm going to avoid that, I'm going to avoid the app, because if I look at the app, that's going to show me that I failed. It was just a lot of up and down, like, oh, I'm doing really well, oh, I'm doing really bad, oh, I'm doing really well, or I'm doing really bad, oh, I've given up, but now I'm on it again, back on track. Like, it's exhausting. It takes it out of you. And I guess my final remarks is just so glad to not do that again. And I, again, wouldn't recommend. Minus 100 out of 10.
Yeah. No.
No.
It's a no from me. I'm just glad, like, I'm so glad that we're so far removed from these things. But that's not to say, I know that some people may still be trapped in these cycles, but you know, that's why we're giving our experience on them. And to me, I can't imagine the torture of sitting there at work in a job that, you know, obviously you love what you do then. That's not to say that you didn't love what you did then, but I know that there have been some jobs where I've been clock watching anyway, to be like, when am I going home? And to think, not only am I clock watching, but I'm clock watching to see when I can eat. We're not supposed to live like that.
Yeah, and I didn't love my job.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to say it, and then you'd be like, hold on a minute, I loved my job.
No, I definitely didn't. I always had a passion for psychology, and obviously my dream was to become a therapist. So yeah, I was freaking buzzing to like retrain. But Natalie, tell us about your second diet.
Yeah, so this was, and I'm sure people have done things like the juice diet, these kind of things. This, for me, I took it upon myself to do this. No one told me to do this. I just thought, I want to lose weight. So how about let's just have soups? Let's just drink soups. And it's really funny as well, because my best friend, we were talking about diets that we've been on. And she went, oh my God, I went on a cabbage soup diet. And it was so funny. She was like, yeah, but I did it. She's gonna kill me, but I'm going to explain my experience. She was like, I just did it, and just like the gut ache, like the just actual gut ache, she was just like, it was awful. I tell you, when you do a soup diet, your farting is just next level. I'll explain.
Especially cabbage farts.
Oh my God, I'll explain like the side effects of it. But basically what I did was, as I said, I would eat a breakfast, and I said I would have soup for lunch and dinner. And I think I've really started to do this like on and off. And most of the time I wouldn't really have a breakfast. I say I'd have porridge in the morning, and then I'd have soup. God. But I remember doing it at one point when I do a pantomime, and for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what that is, it's a Christmas show that is really traditional in the UK. We take like Snow White, and you put it on stage and you sing and you put different music to it. But it's, for me as well, getting older, dancing takes its toll on my body a lot more than it used to do. So you need a lot of energy, and at some point you're doing 3 shows a day, and they're like nearly, oh God, I think they run sometimes over 2 hours. That's not to say I'm on stage all of that time, but they're higher energy. And I would be having soups, so I would not have a breakfast. So I'd go in for maybe 10 o'clock, then I'd have a soup for dinner, and then I'd go home and I'd have a soup. Oh my God, my energy, like I literally would sometimes go on stage and I feel like I have nothing to give. I stand on the side of the stage and think, I actually don't know how I'm even going to lift my arms. And that, it's awful as well, because like doing something that you absolutely love and then going on stage and feeling like all you're doing is dreading whether you're going to be able to get through the dance, whether like your breathing is going to be able to keep up. It was just horrible. And obviously, my hunger was just absolutely through the roof. And I remember at one point when I was doing this show, I got asked to fill in for an actor's role. So I was no longer dancing, which meant I was downstairs in the changing room by myself a lot, and everyone brings food in. It's all about, I don't know why, for some reason we just love talking about food. It's like, you're gonna get a Nando's, like who's bringing this in today, and there would always be like some cakes and biscuits, some sweets, and I would just sit there and just go in, like literally go in, and because no one else was in the room. And then I remember I would come home, I would have the soup, and then I was staying with somebody else at the time, and I had like a whole sort of wing to myself, and I'd have all my food in the room with me, and I would just get it out and just sit in bed and just eat and eat and eat until I went to sleep. Because obviously, like you say, it's your body alerting you to be like, you're not giving me the energy that I need to be able to do what you're asking me to do. And it was just that cycle for a really, really long time. And yes, the side effects are just, my stomach was just, you're not putting fiber, Like, your body needs fibre. Like, this is awful, but I'm sure that everybody knows it's constantly going to the toilet because you're just not giving your body what it needs to properly digest anything. So it just wasn't a pleasant time. And I don't actually, like when I look back at it, I'm like, I tried to make myself survive off of liquid. I have water to keep myself hydrated. I have drinks to do that. Basically, having soups is I think it is anyway. You're not really going to get much nutrients from it. The soups that I was making anyway, because I know that, you know, it can be like a really nice meal, like when there's loads of veg in it and it's like you've got chunks of like sweet potato in it, you've got a big bit of bread, like the soup can be amazing. But that wasn't my soup. It was literally just vegetables blitzed with like vegetable stock. What I would say about doing this diet is like, I think it's like the equivalent of like me being a 99-year-old person and no longer having my own teeth and having to like do you know what I mean, or a baby. Like, I'm treating myself as like I'm not allowed solid foods. Like, I can't have I can't have a sandwich. Like, everyone needs to know. And like, if you don't know, I would because I don't think that I really did until I really got into researching and doing, you know, my nutrition and health course that I did and all of those things and books that I read, like just even the basics of why we need certain macronutrients. Once you actually know that, hold on a minute, like, okay, I need fats because I need to support my hormonal functions. Hold on a minute, I need carbs because not just because I need them because I've been to the gym. I need them in everyday life because I need them to support walking around, giving me energy to work, keeping me alert. Once you actually like look and you're like, so why did I ever think it was necessary to cut them out? And it wasn't really until I read up on those things and like, I just thought, God, I've been so misled, and I've really let that skew my view of food. So no, never again.
How would you rate that?
I really didn't keep up. Like, it wasn't very long for me. Like, it was on and off, as I said, but I'd rate that -10, sure.
And that just proves how unsustainable that was in the first place, because you couldn't keep it up for very long. Just proves how horrendous it was.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even now, guys, I'm sure like everyone's life gets really hectic. Like I said, back then, if I skipped meals, it didn't really bother me. But now I'm so educated on food and what it does, I can't actually do it. I physically can't. I can't restrict. Like, my body is like, I can't let you. And my mind is like, I can't let you. There's just no want in me to do it.
It reminds me of that TikTok sound.
Yeah.
No. That's your body right now. No.
Yeah.
It just proves how like in tune you are now with your body as well. The fact that you're not just going to ignore the messages that your body's telling you, you're feeling it and you're acknowledging it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for anybody that feels like that hasn't clicked for them, it does. Like, it does get to a point where like you really start to tune in with your body again, and like those hunger cues come back again. It might take time, as we said. They do. You will get there.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I just want to mention again the binging as like a feedback marker that you're not eating enough. And as you were speaking, Natalie, I was just thinking, if your body or brain could talk, it would probably be saying, oh my gosh, we're starving. And the same with me as well, like, she's starving me. And I think understanding that biological response and the biological understanding of why people have the urge to binge is so important and can really help you. And I know there's people listening who struggle with the urge to binge, and I would just want to ask you, like, could this be a feedback marker for you?
That's such a nicer way to put it as well. Like, that's such a more calming way to put it, instead of like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, I feel ashamed, I'm binging. It's like, this is actually my body telling me you need to eat more. You're allowed to eat more.
It's just a more compassionate way of viewing binges. And that's why my philosophy in binges isn't always, oh, let's get rid of the urge, because all of that urge is actually trying to protect you, save you because of your restriction. And I think that's how we need to see it. And I know people may be like, oh, that feels a bit weird to hear. But yeah, that urge to binge isn't always a bad thing.
It's another message that your body's telling you. Like hunger signals, like satiety signals, they're messages. Binging is just like a message in a different form that you also need to listen to instead of trying to ignore.
Absolutely. Okay, Beth, tell us, please.
So my last diet is going to be quite similar to Harriet's. It's all about intermittent fasting, but obviously we've all got our different experiences, and as always, I just take mine to the extreme. But obviously intermittent fasting is basically just altering your meal time. And for a lot of people, the goal is weight loss. For me, it was absolutely weight loss. Some people might do it for other health benefits or whatever, but just sort of like the community that I saw was about weight and fat loss. So there's lots of different ways this can be done. Obviously, Harriet has given you one of them, but I adopted like the time restricted feeding approach. So for me, this was essentially just justifying my binge restrict cycle. It had been given a fancy name. I'd come across it on the internet. Loads of people on social media were doing it and normalizing it. A lot of the YouTubers that I watched at the time were doing it as well. And I thought, oh, this sounds really good. I'm allowed to starve myself for as long as I can manage. And then I will sort of attempt to eat in a balanced way when my few-hour window came along. But obviously I would just end up overeating and essentially binging, and then wake up the next day and try again. So I would aim to start eating at 12:30 in particular, because when I worked at a sort of like office place, we had 3 breaks. One of them was like 10:30 in the morning, then lunch break was 12:30, and then we had a break at 3, and then obviously home for like 5. So I would always try and like push it to 12:30 and be like, right, I'm not going to give in on my first break. I'm going to wait till lunchtime. And then I'd try and finish my eating window at 6 o'clock. So I vividly remember, even when I realised that this wasn't working and I sort of like gave up this approach, I had such a mental issue with eating past 6 o'clock. I wasn't as fussed about like eating breakfast in the morning, but as soon as it got past 6 o'clock, I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to eat anymore. So it really like highlights that these like little rules that you pick up throughout these little diets can actually like carry on with you for like the rest of your life until like you actually work to properly move past those thoughts and undo those patterns. You do carry it with you. And I think the biggest issue for me was it was like harmful to my mental and physical health, because this type of diet was like, I know some people can do it and it works for them and good for you, but especially for the people susceptible to eating disorders, me being one of them, for those like me who could manage to mold any diet and help it justify their binge restrict cycle. Like I could take any diet, I could take Slimming World or weight, any diet, and I could mold it to fit like the messed up eating disorder brain that I was trying to normalize. So obviously fasting can lead to increase in stress hormones, increase in cortisol, may even lead to more food cravings, obviously. And there's no surprise that overeating and binge eating are 2 common side effects of intermittent fasting. And this is essentially what I experienced. I say I didn't keep this up for long, but I think, like I said before, I sort of like carried this pattern with me. Like I would still try and push breakfast back. I would still try and not eat late at night. Like I hated the feeling of waking up in the morning and still feeling like I was like a little bit full from the night before. I remember getting so upset when like people or friends would like book meals to go out of an evening and they'd book it for like 7 o'clock. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, we're not going to be eating until like 8, half 8. And I'd like beg people to like book the meal for like 5:30 so I could still eat early. So it really like affected me. I know I mentioned to you girls that James Smith made a really hilarious video on this topic.
Yeah.
And I did share this in the group chat, and it's called Intermittent Fuckwits. Honestly,
I love it. Literally, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he is. I think really like him.
We all shared the vibe, didn't we?
Yeah, and
yeah.
I only heard of him because you girls told me about him, and I listened to the podcast he was on the Diary of a CEO, which I so recommend anyone listen to that episode after you've listened to ours. But it was just, yeah. But he's just so down to earth. He just says it how it is. And
we really enjoy like the no bullshit approach, don't we? And I think seeing people like him, I followed him on Facebook, got well over a year ago, and then started following him on Instagram and listening to his podcast. And it was only until I started listening to other people and other people's perspectives that were going against the intermittent fasting that I actually realised we're essentially just glorifying skipping breakfast, and that intermittent fasting is not a special diet. You are literally just depriving yourself of, in my opinion, one of the best meals of the day. I think breakfast is phenomenal and so exciting. I realised that I didn't need to do loads of research to find out my perfect diet, because I already knew my perfect diet, and it was just eating in a way that made me the happiest. And I just wasted so many years scouring the internet for the miracle diet that would work for me, instead of just stopping and like looking inside and listening to my body, listening to my mind, listening to my taste buds, like things that have been given to you to use. I was ignoring to eat food that I didn't like in quantities that were just not enough for me personally. So I sort of realised the best diet for me is whatever makes me feel the best mentally and the best physically. And I think that's why people like James Smith and like us are so important, because unless you hear other people say, you don't have to do this, or here's like an alternative, you don't realise.
Amen.
I love how you put that, honestly.
Yeah.
It's
the thing is as well, I think it's really important, because it's like we're all searching for this, like you say, this way of eating which works, and it's like there being sort of a blanket sort of instructions to how to eat. Oh, hold on a minute, now everybody's eating like this, I should do it. Your body is, and the way it works is completely different to the person that you're sitting next to. Like completely different from Betty over the road, Barbara across the street who's telling you that she's on Weight Watchers. Your body isn't going to react in the same way that their body is, but still we just think, I don't know, I think we've all got this thing in which we really all do want to eat the same, because we think that it all works in the same way.
Yeah, literally. And that's exactly like one of my main problems with dieting, is that it's a set of rules and it doesn't take into account context in your context. It doesn't take into account what your day is like, what's going on in your body, what your emotions are like on that day. And that's why it doesn't make sense to follow this set of rules when it doesn't take into consideration you. Diets do not take you into consideration, no matter how hard they pretend that they do, and they got your best interest at heart. And diets just have a really sneaky way of making you forget that all the previous diets that you did in the past didn't work and they made you miserable. And then you find this, oh my God, but this one's really good. How has like the marketing or the drive to do this and the beliefs about dieting literally caused me to like have like amnesia.
Yeah. Complete and utter blackout.
Literally. So Beth, back to intermittent fasting. Would you recommend it? Rate it out of 10 for us.
I'd probably give it a 1 out of 10, purely because I didn't use it in the way was instructed in the first place. So I can't fully comment on the diet as a whole because I didn't do it properly in the first place. And there's going to be a couple of people out there that say, oh my God, this works so well for me. And just as someone who has a background of eating disorders, of taking things to the extreme, being obsessive and just wanting to binge all the time, it just wasn't the right fit for me at all. And yeah, 1 out of 10, because breakfast is the best meal of the day. It's the best meal of the day. How could you want to cut that out and say you're happy?
Yeah, I think like it is that thing as well. Some people, they just don't like breakfast. Like, again, I was talking to my friend and she was like, for no other reason other than I don't feel very well if I eat breakfast, because I would have to eat breakfast very early in the morning because, you know, I can't really have it when I'm traveling on my way to work or when I get to work. It's like, that just goes to prove that we are so different. But I am with you on, I look forward to breakfast. I wake up and I'm like, yes.
I do believe there's some people out there who could happily just not have breakfast and be fine. But it's the difference between if you've had a history of disordered eating or eating disorders, that's when I would say, and that's me. I am that person. Yeah. And so I make sure that I have breakfast and I eat regularly throughout the day, like where I can, I mean, I'm fully recovered. So it's not like I absolutely have to do this because otherwise I'll relapse. But majority of the time, yes, I make it a point to. But yeah, so obviously we're talking through the lens of disordered eating.
And I'm also speaking from like being in a privileged position of being able to have breakfast at like 9 o'clock if I wanted to. I think if I did have a job that started at 7 and I was trying to wolf down my breakfast at 6:30 in the morning, I don't think I'd be too impressed either. But it's all about still listening to your body, not having to add a fancy label to it. Just be like, yeah, I've delayed breakfast. Yeah, I've skipped breakfast. It's not a special diet. I'm just listening to my hunger cues and listen to my satiety cues, and everything's fine.
So again, we've decided
impromptu
deciding that we are going to do another parts of this podcast explaining how we broke free from dieting, giving you tips and advice, giving you our experience on what helped us to find food freedom, what started us on that journey. So this has obviously proven to be like such a huge topic that we could just talk about forever. So why not,
So we're going to do a whole episode, like Natalie said, on how to break free from diets. I think it'll be a really good episode and helpful as well.
So excited.
Yes. So we will see you next time for that episode. But as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for, as always, I'd love chatting with you girls. So yes, we'll see you next time.
And if you want to DM us and let us know what cray diet you went on, let us know. We would definitely love to hear. We also just wanted to say that if you have been loving the show so far and you want to support the show and you maybe want to help caffeinate us, we do in the description we do have a buy us a coffee link, and essentially that's just a way that you can support the show, you can help caffeinate us. Just putting that out there. That's in the show notes.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you love this episode, make sure you subscribe to us so you don't miss out. And if you really love this episode, we would also love it if you could leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast.
Also, if you think any of your girl or guy friends would enjoy this podcast, make sure you share it with them so we can spread the love.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram over at Rewrite the Rules Pod. If there's anything that you would love for us to talk about, just send us a little DM and we'll add it to our list. See you next time.
Bye.